Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and we're trying a new mic position today, so hopefully it works out for us. But I'm super excited for today. I'm super excited for today. We got a good friend of mine, Travis Brady. He is the founder of the Next Gen agency, really helping people build brand, marketing, and be seen and be heard. So all very important things, and no matter what area of life you're talking about it. This show's about legacy, though. And so how does the value of branding and marketing apply directly to you being remembered the way you want to be remembered? So that's where we're going to start, Travis. Thank you so much for all that you've done in my life. Just so you guys know, what was it, 5 years ago? Is that when we started working together? I don't know, 2018-ish. So how long ago that was. Mm-hmm. Travis was the one who told me to suck it up, Buttercup, start a podcast.
Is that what I said? Suck it up, Buttercup.
Probably not.
That was the overall message that was taken away.
But that's what I got out of it. Stop being scared of being perfect. Stop being scared of potentially screwing up. Use the skills you have and go start a podcast. So I did. And 300 some odd episodes later, we now have a podcast. People love it. Fans love it. They message me, hey, I learned this. Hey, I got in touch with this guest. Hey, I'm working with this person from your podcast. So I'm grateful just to be making connections. I one day maybe would love to make money from this. I don't make money right now. I just enjoy sharing. That's why I do it, because I enjoy sharing. And it's been a long time coming to get Travis back on the podcast. So,
because I had to beg your ass to get back on the podcast. I was like, Sam, one of my best friends, I have to beg him to get on the podcast. I was like, dude, we got some good shit to share.
But the truth is, I've done this podcast 6 times because he's very hey, come over and record a podcast. And the weakness or strength, whatever you want to call it, of mine is that if you're not in front of me, most of the time you don't exist to me. And that's a positive and a negative, right? I can be very focused on what I'm doing. The downside is sometimes I need to be more attentive to other people around me. And if it's not in my schedule, then it also is not happening. So finally, I scheduled them into my podcast, and then it happened, right? As soon as it got on the schedule, 3 days later, we're recording a podcast. So
Genius.
The way, Travis, if you want to get back on my podcast, I will send you the link. You could schedule once a week, buddy.
And we'd have plenty of shit to talk about along the way.
Exactly. But talk about kind of your background and how you got to where you are in business right now. And then we're going to dive into more of the specifics about building a personal brand.
Well, when I was young, what did you want to be when you were younger? What was your dream job?
Honestly, I wanted to be a motivational speaker.
Motivational speaker?
That was before I knew that, or before I learned that I don't want to be a motivational speaker. I want to lead people to improve their lives, not through motivation, but through inspiration. So
that's kind of the common term. If you're not a speaker, you're a motivational speaker, right? Because most people don't understand what the difference of motivation and inspiration is, which we could actually talk about in this podcast. You share a really good graph talking about intrinsic versus intrinsic motivation and inspiration. And I think that's super important to understand. But for me, what I was inspired, so inspiration for me is how I define it is more based upon love. What I really loved when I was younger is sports, baseball, football, basketball. My dad coached me and my brother at a young age. And so naturally, that was my dream. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. But when you lose every region game your senior year of baseball, it no longer becomes as fun, and it actually turned more into work. And so I don't know, I just kind of got burned out. But during that time, I really got into fitness and personal training. And then just one thing leads to another. Just with just like most people in their lives. And it led into, it really doesn't matter how they're training if they're not eating right. So then it went down the road of nutrition. And then I got into strength and conditioning. I wanted to work with athletes. And so I was working at the University of Utah. But the biggest thing that I began to notice over time is if a person really doesn't believe that they can get into shape, or they really don't believe they're a top athlete or a top performer, it's like a I can't even say the word. It's a self-prophecy. Like they're going to make themselves true. Haven't you noticed that? Like people always follow, like we can't be wrong about ourselves, right? We always have to follow through. And so I began to really look deeper into this and start to study mindset. And then that led into more transformation coaching. And then over the years, I've led, if I really want to get this out there, I got to make sure my brand is really clear. I got to make sure that I understand. And so that's when I started to learn about branding and storytelling and how to really influence people. And then I just had other personal trainers come my way. And so I naturally just started to help them, and they started to get results. And I thought, man, maybe this could be something that I really turn to. So I just kind of like what I've always done, just kind of followed my heart and what I love to do, and started to help them, and realized that they were struggling with a lot of the things that most people struggle with, which is they really don't know their mind. They really don't know their identity. And how this shows up in business is this shows up in the form of your brand. And so that's what birth means, branding. And then it just took off from there into an agency, because what I realized is that a lot of people went out and hired some really big idiots to build their business. And so I was like, geez, I'll just give them Frank. I'll just give them my team, and, and let's come in here and help kind of swoop underneath of them and be a part of their team. So in a nutshell, that's my journey. And I actually came across Sam's video the other day. We need to redo that video.
Oh, man, that's so bad. That's another thing that he has told me for probably the last 6 months or maybe a year, probably longer than a year. You need to redo your video. And he's right. I do need to redo my video. Let's go.
And it was great at the time. And And you can tell you were just going through those little newbie lines and everything. But I would love to see a video now versus what you did. This is 4 or 5 years ago.
4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. It would be cool to see the difference between them.
It was before the beard. It was before the countless hours on stage presenting what I know to be true in my soul. So the confidence and the ease at which I can speak about my craft now versus then, not the same. The nice thing about the video is I was about 25 pounds thinner.
Was you?
I was.
I noticed you had a more full set of hair. You must have been stressed out with your kids.
Now. If you just wear a hat, then nobody knows how fast you're going bald.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's just easier to take care of with a hat, unless I actually
makes you look older.
Well, the beard helps. And that was a branding choice. I'm speaking about personal branding. If you Google Sam Knickerbocker or Samuel Knickerbocker, there's really two main results. There's a few other stragglers in there, but they don't really have any following. But there's me, and then there's a Baptist preacher out in Virginia or West Virginia, somewhere around there. And those are really the two Sam Knickerbockers. Well, when I first created this video, I was trying to establish a brand online and get prominence over everybody else. I wanted to own the first page of Google. Mm-hmm. And this other guy, he still beats me out because he has a congregation, 400, 500 people who hit his website every Sunday for service, anybody who's on, so he just has got a little bit more presence or consistent presence. I still outrank him most of the time, but his has more, he's number 2 always. So he's consistent. His videos, his YouTube channel, because I talked to the guy, I called him the other day. I was like, man, I just want to introduce myself. I've been tracking you down, chasing you down on here. And he's like, oh, am I doing good on Google? I didn't even know. My nephew, he said that I should put the stuff on YouTube, but I'm not a tech person. So I just said, do whatever you want. So he actually, his nephew or somebody, maybe it's not his nephew, but Sam, if you hear this, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. But somebody, their tech person, just posts all of his sermons on YouTube, and they get not a lot, but 400 or 500 views on every video. And so he outranks me on YouTube, but pretty much everything else on Google is me. But going back to my page, my point, if you click on images when you Google search us, then you'll see him and his wife and his, I think, 5 children. And at the time, he was wearing a suit and a tie and was clean shaven. His wife is brunette. My wife is brunette. Like, very similar. In fact, I've received calls from people trying to get in touch with people in his congregation. Right?
Interesting.
So I was like, okay, well, I can't change what he's going to wear to church. I can't change how he's going to professionally show up. And so that's why I originally grew a beard, because I didn't think that he would ever grow a beard as a clergyman. Also why I wear polos now or no tie almost ever when I'm presenting in public is based off of I can't control them, but I can control what I do. Mm-hmm. Well, during COVID, the guy decided to grow a beard. Ugh. So now we both have bearded and non-bearded pictures and videos online. So it's just even more confusing now.
What's even more crazy is a Samuel Knickerbocker is going to be preaching.
Well, I believe I could talk about God.
Oh, you absolutely 100% can. And you know what? When, and this is jumping in really quick to the branding part of it, a lot of how we show up in this world is essentially what we really believe about existence. Like, why are we here? And a lot of our deeper beliefs, they come back to, what do you believe about God? Are you Christian? Are you Muslim? Right? Buddhism? Are you atheist? Are you agnostic? Because how you operate in this world and the meaning you take away from life. And I've actually learned a lot from you. I actually was telling my wife the other day, I was like, you just need to have a good old fashioned sit down with Sam and listen to some. Have you had any in-depth conversations about that on your podcast?
I actually don't think I have.
Well, why the fuck not? It's really good.
I've talked to some clergy people, but I normally talk about other things. I haven't talked to them about like in-depth theology about what I believe. It's a battle in my soul. I share it one-on-one, but I want to write a book about it. And maybe that's why I haven't ever shared it on a podcast, because like I actually want to write a book about it.
What's the book going to be called?
The Concept of Christ.
Concept of Christ.
I have the title. I mean, I guess somebody could steal my title. That would suck. But I just think it's such an important thing to share, and I haven't figured out how to do that yet. And so I don't want to just go talk about it all over without a book yet. But maybe that holds me back. I should just share it more, and then when I write the book, people who want to read will read.
Well, I think I think we're a good place that, like, if I was you, just because you explain it so well, is essentially the thought of a redeemer, which is Jesus Christ, and the way we view.
Well, you call it Jesus Christ. That's the whole point of the whole conversation, is because you were raised in a Judeo-Christian values, mm-hmm. predominantly a Latter-day Saint Mormon culture.
Jack Mormon.
You can call it whatever.
That's the name of my book. I'm going to call it Growing Up Jack Mormon.
Yeah, but the point is that the culture around you, the people who worked at the grocery stores, the people who fixed your cars, everybody, there was an underpinning in that culture in Utah of an LDS culture. Mm-hmm. And that underpinned that culture. You grew up in the Bronx in New York, there's a different underpinning, right? You've got like Irish Catholics, you've got a lot of Jews, you've got like other competing interests. You go to the Deep South, it doesn't matter if you're a believer in God or not, you cannot escape the fact that the communities are religious. And so we all have these different definitions of the same words, and then we as a collective, royal, everybody in the world, argue over the terminology, the language patterns, and in branding, this is actually really, really important when you're talking about what is your cult language, so that you can identify the people that believe as you and the people who don't believe as you. Those are actually really crucial concepts when you're branding, when you're marketing, when you're building something. I still believe that Christ, whoever the guy was, whether it was real, fake, whatever, whoever created the narrative, like, was the best marketer of all time.
Well, you'd have to be.
I mean, it's really, have to be. I would say it's right up between him and Muhammad, the prophet of Islam. Like it's right up there because both of them have about half the world following their belief systems.
So there's some people that say Jesus Christ never existed. Do you believe he existed?
My belief system is it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Like today, whether he existed or not, it doesn't matter. And this is like any...
Dude, some Christians are going to be all...
That's okay. This is the thing.
Why would you... So explain that a little bit more in detail. Why does it not...
Because the idea is that Jesus Christ saves you. But that's ultimately in Judeo-Christian values or belief systems, to one degree or another, where you're like the deep south and you believe only in grace and just accepting him and saying that Jesus Christ is your savior, it absolves you from all guilt, shame, everything. And I actually love that belief system. I think that we need a little bit more of that in some of the other more stricter beliefs that are almost like, no, you have to really repent. You have to really put in the work and grueling and groveling to God to be forgiven. I don't believe in that either. So it's like this balancing. But at the end of the day, the concept of Christ or a redeemer or a savior, which Christ is a title which could be translated as savior, redeemer. It's the guy's name was not Jesus Christ. Those are both titles that we assigned to him, or somebody assigned to him.
So yeah, when did that terminology become mainstream? I
don't really remember all of the details. But the point of why it doesn't matter to me whether...
You should have talked about this with Bradley. I would have loved to listen to.
And it would be fun to have this conversation.
Because he talks about this all the time, and I was like, oh man, he just needs a good Sam. He needs a good Sam session.
But for me, I think the reality is that if you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, let's just say that you accept it, then maybe it helps you. What does it help you do? It helps you not feel bad about whatever you did. Okay, let's say you don't accept it. His love, his mercy, it's always there for you to take. It doesn't change. You're the only one who changes your orientation towards it. We're just calling it it because it was 2,000 years ago. Nobody can verify whether it actually happened or not, or I haven't met anybody who could verify it. And so the only thing that changes is what we believe about it. And so if you believe that there is a being that takes and absolves you of your sin, then you start to act as if, even though you made a mistake, you can recover, you can become better, and you don't allow your previous failures or previous negative energies to pull you down and remain with you. And so I think that's the real, what really matters. Are you able to separate, hey, that was an action that didn't help me get towards my goal. I'm going to no longer participate in that action, or at least try not to. That's basically the idea of Christ.
So the way I've kind of interpreted it over the years is to essentially bridge the gap between who I am as a human being and God, which is perfection. Right? Because
everybody has a different version of perfection. So now
say that again.
Everybody has a different version of perfection. So now we're talking about Travis's version of perfection. There's people, and this is, I mean this with full respect to every religion, okay? And I don't mean this detrimentally. There are religions that believe that the loving thing to do is to kill you if you're not following their faith, because every moment living in sin is actually damning your soul farther and farther into darkness. And so the loving thing to do is to kill you. To be a perfect follower of their religion would be to murder every person that does not subscribe to their belief, because it puts them out of their further damnation. So it's like their version of perfect, whatever that looks like, and your version of perfect may not be the same, yet we're both chasing from a concept perspective, we're both chasing the same ideals. It's just one person has a different idea about what those ideals, how those manifest.
I get that.
That's what's interesting is like Travis could become his most perfect self, and I might walk up to Travis and be like, I don't want to become like you at all. Now, you might be perfect in your mind, and I don't aspire to be like that. And same thing, Travis could look at me and be like, well, Sam, it works for you, and that's great. I don't want to do that. Great. There's nobody's right or wrong. It's just like, are you working towards what you want to become?
So let me ask you this question. So how do you use the symbolism of that in your life? How does that help you?
So the biggest thing for me is recognizing that my objective is to master master the laws of creation. For me, that's my objective.
See, for me, and so I'll let you carry on, but I want to share this real quick. For me, it's for me to understand how to have higher power in my life.
But to what end? Just so
to what?
I'm full of power. I'm Travis Brady, and I have power. Like, who cares?
God is the God is the highest power in the universe. The way that God's defined, is that right?
Well, I mean, it depends on who you are. I don't define God that way, but it doesn't matter.
Because some people refer to God as higher power, my higher power.
Sure. But the question is, why is higher power necessary? Like, just because you have the greatest body of water on the planet, you own the Atlantic Ocean, you own the Pacific Ocean. Who the freak cares? What are you going to do with it? Like, all that matters is what you could own all the real estate. Guess what? Mm-hmm. You're one dude. You need one house. Even if you could protect it, to what end? Why do you need all the real estate? Okay. So the question is like, okay, so you have all this power of God. You understand you can harness the power of God. Now what? Now what are you going to do? Who are you going to become? That's what I care about. Like, I believe it's past harnessing the power. It's like, well, what are you going to do with the power? And that's where, for me, it's like, well, my goal is to...
What are you going to do with the power?
Is to create more love, create more unity, create more connection in the world.
Why?
Because when I feel connected, that's when I feel the most love in my soul. And I want and desire for other people to feel the same sense of peace, joy, and love that I feel.
So now this gets into... So now we want to give love. So now it comes down to, what's your definition of love?
Yeah, and it's a good question. I actually,
you don't have an answer, Sam? I thought you'd pull out your little dictionary.
We have to go to a funny story before I have an answer.
Okay, tell us the funny story, and I'll tell you my definition.
So when I was younger, in high school, I would tell all the girls that I loved them. And I was homeschooled, so I wasn't really socially aware. And I didn't know that, like, you don't tell people you love them because then they start thinking you like them. And I'm like, whoa. I never said I liked you. I'm just letting you know that, like, you're a being of light, like you're breathing and you deserve love. Like,
this doesn't even surprise me. How old were you when you did that?
It was young. So like 12, 13, 14 years old, I actually wrote out a definition. It was like 2 paragraphs of what love meant to me.
Okay.
So then fast forward to when I'm dating Charlie. And we're laying down on the couch. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I love you. I love you. And she's like, what? And she's freaking out now because she's like, what do you mean you love me? Like, we've only known each other for a little bit. I'm like, well, what does that have to do with anything? Like, why are you basing your love, your desire for somebody's happiness and joy and light off of how long you've known somebody? Like, you should love everybody because you can only love somebody else to the extent that you love yourself. So if you're withholding love from other people, you're ultimately, I believe, withholding love from yourself or different parts of yourself. And I just think, what a shame you don't even love yourself. Now, loyalty, that's different. I love a lot of people. It doesn't mean I'm loyal to them. I love a lot of people that I don't even like, that I wouldn't want to spend time with, that I don't want to be around. Okay? Love is a universal sense of, I believe, understanding that from a quantum physical perspective, everything is energy. Mm-hmm. And it's vibrating at different frequencies, but at the end of the day, there's zero distance or separation between the energy of Travis and the energy of me. We're in different locations, whatever, but in between his ball of energy and my ball of energy, there is a constant stream of other particles floating around as energy.
So have you ever read the book or listened to it, Conversations with God?
I haven't read that book. No.
Oh, it's so good. You got to listen to it. It's one of those books you got to listen to.
Yeah.
It's narrated by this guy, and he's just asking questions to God. And then there's both a male and a female voice to kind of serve both,
Sure,
both things of God. And the conversation I remember in this very concept is, what if you look in your house, and I've been to your house, at what point in time, so you got your main hallway that when you walk in that goes to all your rooms, at what point are you in the hallway, and at what point are you not in the hallway? Right. And so when you start to answer that, like, this is, but it's the start to it. And that's how I would explain like that energy. Like, we're all like the main kitchen to that hallway. At what point is it the kitchen? What point is it the living room? What point is it the hallway? They're all kind of interconnected in that way. Mm-hmm. That's how he explained it in the book. And I was like, yeah, that's really interesting. I like that. Anyways, to kind of tie this back into branding, at the end of the day, one of my deepest beliefs is, like, at the end of the day, like, no one really knows what like, I believe in God. I can't comprehend this vast universe without some higher power of intelligence. And I think our dimension that we live in, I think there's no way whatsoever we could even comprehend what God is, or even know how to feel that type of energy. Right. That's my belief system. Anyways.
And I think, and I believe that if you believe that, then you will stop trying to.
Why?
Because once your subconscious mind, once your brain says that's an impossibility, then it stops trying as hard.
So you think
seeking to figure it out because it doesn't believe it can. The moment you ask yourself, your brain, a question, it might be 3 years later, but one day your brain's going to come up with the answer to that question. So the questions you ask your brain's survival technique is to find an answer. But if you say that question's not important because it's irrelevant, your brain just stops. It's like, that's not an essential thing for my soul to know. I don't care.
I wouldn't say it's irrelevant. I would just say, based upon my understanding now, is I don't know how, I wouldn't know how, because it just comes back down to, like, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. Right? That's a law. Right? So if you look at that, at some point in time, according to the Big Bang Theory, we were all one.
Well, I think we still are one. So what do you mean we were all one? That's like past tense. We are all one. So this is what love is. We are all one.
We are all still connected. What's the difference between one and connected? So I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying. This is what I enjoy about conversations with Sam, is he makes me think about this shit.
Well, it's not just conversations with Sam, although I appreciate that. This is why Travis is so good at helping people brand themselves, because he knows to ask the questions, to keep asking the questions and questions and questions until we get to a point where we can start building off of it. So for me, the difference between connected and one, okay, I would say I am, we're going to bring it back into the physical world for a second. If my child gets hurt, okay, so my son falls off his bike, scrapes his knee. Okay. There's a level of empathy that I can feel and say, okay, I understand that that's painful because I've experienced something similar. So now I'm connected to the pain through past experiences. I'm seeing the pain manifest again in the universe, and I'm, from my own experiences, connected to that experience, which caused me to think of the pain. Okay, so you're connected. I feel the pain of my son to a degree. I feel pain when my son feels pain. But when you think of we are all one, I think of it more like I am equally as much my son's knee as I am me. And that, I don't think of it from a pain perspective like that. Well, sort of I do, right? Because if I'm causing pain on somebody else, let's say I was the one who happened to, push my son off his bike and he hurts himself. Then I just caused pain to me because I have to realize that I just did that and caused pain. So like me causing pain to the world is causing pain to me. Me judging somebody else is ultimately judging a version of me. Me condemning somebody else for whatever their behaviors are, that's ultimately putting a line in my soul that says, if you ever participate in this behavior, you are going to feel as condemned as you just condemned him.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
be careful. And that brings me to my next point. Be careful of who you say you will never become.
Yeah.
Be careful of the things you say will never do. Dude, I said I would never, ever throw my kid a 1-year birthday party. I was like, that's stupid. The kid will never remember it. Save the money, invest it into college. And then here's what my ass is doing. I'm throwing my kid a 1-year birthday party, right? And so, yeah, I think that it is very much exactly what you said. The judge, and it kind of comes back where you're saying the love or lack of love of others is really back to you as the person.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because right now we're going through another hard time of having babies. So we just had a baby, and she's going from breastfeeding to now we're this week we're weaning her off of breastfeeding, or she's weaning herself off breastfeeding, which means we're going to formula, which means naps are not consistent, eating levels are not consistent. She's eating way more than what quote unquote should be normal, I guess. Anyways, and it's a struggle for Charlie. Like she really struggles when she doesn't understand what's going on. And that same fear response, because ultimately fear of the unknown comes out into either anger or for me, I withdraw. When I don't understand something, I don't get angry. I don't get animated. I don't feel emotion necessarily. In the way that my wife does. Charlie, she's more animated and that she's passed that on to Declan, my son, and that's interesting to manage. But for me, I can send my. I
love your choice of words. That's interesting.
I can send my son to my bedroom. I'm not my wife's parent, so I'm not doing anything like that. But like for me, when I experience stress or like I don't know what's going on, I withdraw. Right, I get quiet. I get introspective, and I start thinking about, okay, what can I learn from this? Right, we were talking yesterday, and she's like, "Oh, my legs hurt from rocking the baby to sleep," and I was like, "Okay." So the way Sam thinks about that, when Sam's going through hurt joints and everything, my back's hurting, my neck's hurting because I'm trying to rock my baby to sleep. It hurts for like a few seconds, but it doesn't. It's not that it doesn't hurt for longer, but the second of me explaining it to myself is first, this sucks. And then as soon as I get past the it sucks, it's like, man, I'm so grateful that I have a baby to rock to sleep. I'm so grateful that I have a neck or shoulders. There's people who are paralyzed. They don't get the option. They don't get to rock their baby to sleep. Their knees and their legs, they got blown off in war. They don't have knees and legs that get to hurt. So like the things that people are choosing to, and then I say, okay, well, how's your positive talk going? She's like, well, I'm talking to myself and I'm telling myself that I can make it through it, that I'm strong enough, right? I'm like, okay, if you're sitting there, and this goes for anybody, anywhere in your life, okay? If you're sitting there and you think positive talk is telling you that you can suffer long enough to get to the other side, that is not positive talk. That is prolonged suffering, okay? Positive talk is when you find a gratitude for the suffering.
See, I've been talking to this about my wife. I call it perspective. I think, yeah, perspective. And I think if we changed our perspective on things, I think we'd ultimately find ourselves much more happy on a day-to-day basis. Some natural strength, I'm sure I was taught this at some point in my life, but regardless of what happens in business and life, I've always just had this incredible thirst for the future and optimism of what could be, and the drive to want to wake up and do something each day to move towards that. Right. And I think perspective is an important aspect of that.
Well, and the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, like that book, if you haven't read it, you need to read it. Just even if you have read it, probably go reread it. But I think that book capsulizes the philosophy that I live my life by. And what's interesting is what's been common in my life is I've come to these realizations often through trial and error. And then somebody's like, you're a lot like this book. You should go read this book. And then I read the book. I'm like, oh, thank goodness somebody put it into words because all of my feelings, I feel them, but I don't know how to put them into words. And so I felt the same way about Feelings Buried Alive. Not feeling, no, it's The Untethered Soul. Feelings Buried Alive, okay book, but The Untethered Soul, phenomenal book. If you want to understand, like, where are you in the universe and what's connected to you and what do you actually need to be aware of and what can you just let go of? So all of those things, they put into words better than I can. And that is a good example, because I'm bringing it back to branding, guys, because we're talking to Travis, okay?
I'm bringing it back to life.
Well, it is life. The whole thing's life, but that's the point. That's exactly the point, though. All of these things, these are life, and you are successful. You've had all these experiences, and not just you, but guys, there's at least 1,000 other people on the planet. Okay, at least 1,000 other people on the planet who have had a similar enough experience to you, who are not quite as far on the journey as you, that would pay you $1,000 to learn how to get there faster, to where you are faster. And when you master that equation, okay, how to take those thoughts, those feelings, those ethereal things and put them into a brand story or into word phrases, word tracks that then you can go share publicly, the marketing side, and that builds a brand, and you get 1,000 people to pay you $1,000 to get to the next part of their journey faster. How much do you get from that, Travis? He's got his calculator out.
Is that $1 million? I was actually just going to do the math.
Yeah, it's $1 million. You got 1,000 people to pay you $1,000. You made $1 million. It's not hard to become a millionaire. It's not hard to make money. The hard part is identifying who you are and getting it structured properly to where somebody else feels so much connection, so much value out of what you're offering that they're willing to give you $1,000 of their hard-earned money, which for most people, let's say they're making $30 an hour. Okay. That's nine times 10. That's 90 hours worth of effort, minimum. That's a month and a half worth of effort. And they're going to pay you a month and a half of their efforts, or I guess a week and a half, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks of their efforts. They're going to pay you to help them receive peace and joy and light faster. It's a good trade. Now, the question is, can you market it that way? Can you tell a good enough branding story that they feel like it's a good trade? Yeah.
So we're not talking about God anymore. I think we're off that conversation.
We can go back to God.
We made it right. Here's one question before we kind of jump in, and we'll kind of tie this all together for the people who are listening. What do you think happens when you die?
I have no idea. I mean, I have my suspicions, but
what's your suspicion?
My suspicion is that our energy will continue to develop and learn to create.
Well, do you think that we will ever become conscious again in a next energy stage that would have us understand and reflect on and remember our experiences here on Earth?
So that's a funny question. Okay. Because
why is it a funny question? Because here's, and before you go into this question, here's a question I ask people. Do you go to church because you're afraid to go to hell, or you want to go to heaven? And I think most people go do things more out of motivation and fear of something, of not wanting something rather than wanting something.
Correct. I would agree. So here's the question I would counter offer the public to that.
Okay.
Because the idea that are we ever going to become conscious again of what we experienced on this life?
Yeah.
I'm more of the opinion that this life is actually as far as the real you, if you were to close your eyes and ask yourself where you are and go into a deep meditation about identifying you, I don't believe you are inside of your body. There's a particle of you that can view you. Okay, so that part of you, I believe that part of you is actually more asleep in this life for most people than conscious. So the idea of are we ever going to become conscious of this life? That's are you ever going to remember your dreams? Maybe a little bit, but maybe the process of this life is waking up from a state of unconsciousness of our already exalted God state. So why would I chase to go more into conscious of my dreams?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Of a dream state, and I mean that not like of my creation, but like a passive state, rather than a more active state as a creator. Mm-hmm. When you're sleeping, you're not really doing anything. You're laying there and stuff's going on in your mind. When you're awake in this world, then you're actually able to get up, do stuff, walk, move around. Well, I think that most people are in a dream state or a sleep state. They're not awake. Their consciousness is not awake. Their you is not awake. They're just mindlessly doing whatever anybody else is doing.
Well, the science would show that is actually pretty true. 95% of our actions are unconscious, which is below our awareness. So you're not wrong.
I know I'm not wrong
in that aspect of it. But anyways, to bring it back from God and everything, and those who are listening, like, you know, I'm Christian. I believe in God. Having my son really brought me back to having a better conversation, not a better conversation, a better relationship with God. And overall, like, you know, I was telling someone this the other day, if someone came up to me and, you know, God really doesn't exist for all these reasons, blah, 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 like, just don't tell me. Just don't tell me that. Like, why don't I want to know that? Is because I find a lot of meaning and purpose and happiness. And so if this whole life's just meaningless and pointless, then dude, that's fine, but don't tell me. And the reason why don't tell me is because I actually really enjoy life. Like, there's some times I go through, I believe life is about real, like, there's a quote or a Bible verse that always comes to me. And the quote is, heaven is here on earth. What if that heaven really was here on earth? What if this is just the top of whatever is ever going to be? You know what I mean? And so, and the conversations with God brought me into this thought process too, like really enjoying the present. I think we're so stuck on the past, or we're so stuck on the future, that we really don't live in what the gift is, which is the present. And so I have these amazing present moments in my life, and I'm like, wow, this is so awesome. And I think a lot of peace, happiness, fulfillment comes from being in that present moment. And so I believe, like, the key to being happy is progressing. I believe fundamentally, if you want to be happy, you got to progress, right? And I've really learned this through training people over the years. You see this multi-million dollar CEO. They lost $200,000 in an investment. They're fucking miserable. They hate life. A dude just got $1 raise. Dude, they're going to Vegas. They're like, that progression. It wasn't about where they're at in that state of who had more money or who had more health or wealth or whatever the conversation is. It was the fact of they progressed and it felt good. Right. And so now I begin the conversation is, for me anyways, is, so now how do we progress? So if we're here to progress and be happy, now what's the formula to progress? And I believe, you know, due to the nature of, if you want to receive something, then you got to give something. And I think early on in my entrepreneur journey, my business journeys, I didn't get this. I grew up kind of poor and broke. It was like, I need to make money. Did I care about my clients? Absolutely. Did I want them to get results? Absolutely, I did. But I think on the forefront of my mind, it wasn't coming in and really getting my message out there, serving people, giving to people who would never or could never give back to me. I think it was more about, as soon as I receive, then I will give you, then I will be invested. So it was kind of a selfish mentality. And as a result, I got compensated for it. How much did I get compensated? $75,000 total in 4 years. When clients see where we're at right now, let me remind you where I first started. Let me remind you of the shit that I went through. And so, you know, and I tell people, you know, maybe people have found success in not giving as much. I've never, ever found myself receiving more than I was giving. I just haven't. And maybe that's true for other people, because I realize at the end of the day that we're all kind of full of shit. And what I mean by that is we all have like experiences that we've been through that are true to us that may be untrue to other people. So anyways, so I got to give. So now the question is, well, what do I give? You know, because if I want to receive something, you know, special in this world, then I better give something special. So what do I give? And for me, I believe that's me. What is me? Well, I'm unique. I'm different. I'm innovative. And yeah, I'm here. So that means I have something that the world needs. And I call that next gen. And so that's the foundation of our brand and that deeper belief. And so now our goal in branding is to help find people's next gen. What makes Sam unique, different, and innovative? What's his stories? What's his experience? What's his belief system? And so to go down to that core belief system, because usually when we go down that core belief system where, Sam talks about symbolism and all these different things and how he interprets life, that goes into how he lives life. And so now he wants to share that love with other people, which is one of his deepest beliefs is that we all have a legacy to give to the world. And a big part of that is money, which comes from his upbringing. And so that's essentially where we start. And I think people begin with superficial stuff. One of the common things I hear with branding is like, oh, that's stupid. Branding's stupid. And I completely agree. When they say that, I completely agree. If your idea of a brand and flashy colors and logo and trying to look cool is your idea of brand, I believe that's absolutely stupid. So I agree. But that's not branding. Branding's so much deeper than that. It's your messaging. It's your formula for success. And then the most superficial part of it is, it is your logos and the graphics. Because at the end of the day, we do judge the book by its cover. And I don't give a shit what anyone says. We do initially have, and that's all you get today in today's world. I was talking to Frank, which is our web designer. How much time do you think it took to get our attention? How much time do you think you had to get people's attention when websites first popped up?
To get how much time for somebody before they lost their?
Today it's like a couple of seconds.
Oh, I would say like 3 seconds now, but maybe you had a minute before just because it took. I mean, you have to think back when the internet started, at least it'd take you 10 minutes to load a freaking web page. So like you better help that those first graphics that loaded were good enough for them to keep sitting there for 5 minutes. And it's not necessarily the first impression, because let's be honest, me and Sam don't have the best first impressions with people because we're just very, what would you call it? Bold. I mean, it's bold, to the point. I call it candor. I actually call it candor because that's the real definition. Like,
and so I really don't initially believe in first impressions. I believe they're important, but what's the most important is the lasting impression. Everyone's top 3 in business is referrals. Your top 3 marketing thing is referrals. You ask any business owner, it's usually in the top 3. So if you want a good lasting impression that's going to allow people to really share about your business, then we got to get more connected on what that brand really is. And like we were saying earlier in the podcast too, as we were just BSing, is like who you believe you are and your identity and what you believe about yourself and love and all these things is transferred and connected to the next person. So what I have come to find out over the years is, man, we have way more influence than we could ever imagine. We have way more influence than we could ever imagine. And I think that scares most people. And I'm sure you've heard this, is when they start to become incredibly influential and they start to learn the power of it, they almost sometimes view it as manipulative because they feel like I shouldn't have this much influence. Have you ever had that conversation with people before?
Absolutely. And I think it just really comes down to what we were talking about before, is like conscious or awareness. It has nothing to do with you already have that much influence. All that's happening as you become more aware of how to actually control the influence and direct the influence, that's all that's happening, right? You already have the amount of influence that you have. When you work with Travis, when you work with me, when you work with another coach or mentor or guide, they're just showing you what's already there. Travis isn't going to come here and rewrite your story. He's going to
create. Yeah, people say create my brand. I was like, I'm not creating your brand. I will help you evolve what is already there to create what you say is a brand, but you already have that right there.
It's already in you. So when we illuminate it for you, when we show you what that looks like, and you become aware of it, then you can actually start making choices based on that awareness. Now, I think Travis, you can speak to this. I know I've done it. When I was first becoming aware and learning how to control my influence, of course there was things that I did that I thought, oh, this is going to be a good, like, I don't remember. There's a few times where I can think of, I use my influence intentionally, maliciously, right? There's a few times, like, I'm not sitting here saying I'm a saint.
Well, if you've been married, you've used it at some point in a way that wasn't good.
I can tell you honestly.
I'm sure you can.
In my marriage, there's been one time that I know I intentionally misused it. And my wife and I both know when that is. We were very clear about it. We had a conversation very quickly after because it didn't feel good. The point is, sometimes you do stuff and you think you're doing it the right way, but at the end of the day, it was just wrong. What you did was not right. And you got to own up to that because we're learning. So don't think, oh, you're going to go be this perfect person right away. Sometimes people might have interacted with me 5-10 years ago and said, Sam, you were really screwed up when you did that. Well, I probably was. And would the Sam today do what the Sam 10 years ago did? Probably not in certain circumstances. But at that point in time, I was learning how to use my influence. And just like a toddler who learns how to walk or talk or eat or do anything, when you're learning how to use your influence, you're going to screw up. You're going to do things that you regret. You're going to make mistakes. And that's part of learning how to master your influence. You're going to have brand things that you're like, oh, this is really part of my brand. And it's going to totally offend some people. And you're like, whoa, I never thought of what I was doing from that perspective. And sometimes it's going to offend people and you're going to say, I don't care. It's your own dang fault. You're offended. And other times you're going to be like, wow, I really missed the ball on that one. I don't want to give off that impression. And I'm going to change because I thought it would show up one way and it showed up a different way. That was a lack of execution on my influence. And so I think that having a coach kind of walk you through and illuminate that, that's what I like about Travis, is he's able to help you through that process for your business or for your life or for your marriage, whatever it is. Like if you want to have a certain brand and have it look a certain way and not just Potemkin Village look, but like, how do we help the esoteric match? How do we help the exoteric, the outside, match the esoteric, the inside? Mm-hmm. And to do that, you have to go inside. So don't think that you're just going to get sold some graphics or whatever. If you're up for the challenge, then working with Travis and the Next Gen Agency is really, honestly, it's more working with yourself than you've ever been allowed yourself to do.
Yeah, a common question I ask people is, as a leader and as a coach or mentor, or however you just describe yourself, do you give people what they want or do you give people what they need? Right? And my belief system is you give people what they need so they can get what they want. Right? And sometimes we, as human beings, we do the same thing. We say, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want. But really, what do you need? Right? And someone said this years ago, and it's remained true. And maybe I've just made it true. Maybe I'm self-prophesizing my own life. But they said, your business will never grow bigger than who you are as a person, as a leader, as an influencer. It just never will. And so I've kind of always held that in the back of my mind when things don't go the way that I want to go. Is like, I have to get better. I have to find a way to get better. And what I've realized is that journey just never ends. And I've had years of coaching, certifications, going to leadership trainings, being in leadership positions. And, and I'll even hear someone like Sam, like, you're a great leader. And then I go, man, I just have so much more to learn, and I don't think I quite understood that years ago. I'd be like, oh, I've learned it, and there's a difference between a trained leader and a learned leader. We could read books, but just reading a book make you a better swimmer. And most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it's getting in the pool, it's swimming, it's having someone watch you, filming yourself. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What was the influence, right? And everything else. And so the more you have that feedback, right, the better. And people think just because you're the center of what's going on, you should understand that. Sometimes you don't always do that. There's some people that, I was watching football last night and this guy caught this ball and it looked like an interception, and he caught it and he ran off the field. Oh my gosh, I made an interception. And he's so happy. Right. And the ref didn't know. And so they went and review it. And I bet if you asked that person, did you pick off that ball? He would have said with every ounce in them. And I've heard people say this. Yeah, I truly intercepted that ball. Or else you'll hear someone saying, you know what? I know I was right there, but I really don't know if I caught the ball or not. Right. And so this is why outside perspective is so important, right? Let's go. What did the ref see? Because they see it from multiple angles that you can't see. And so sometimes we try to solve the problem from our own eyeballs, and you just can't do it. And it's because we look at things the way that we're comfortable at looking at things, because we don't like to be uncomfortable, because we're just fucking human beings like that. And we don't like to feel any type of pain. So we look at the things that we're comfortable with. Right. But in that process of doing that, that holds us back from growing and progressing. And if we're not progressing, then what we're giving isn't getting better. So now it takes our lack of receiving away from us. Right. And Tony Robbins said this, and I'll end with this because I could talk all day, is he said the secret to life is merely giving. Because when you give, you're going to receive. When you receive, you're going to feel significant. When you feel significant, you're going to find yourself being in significant areas, connecting to people. When you're connecting to people, you're going to feel love. And when you're around people, your basic necessities of life are going to be taken care of. There's going to be certainty. In that same conversation, there's also going to be spontaneity. And literally every single human need that you seek for as a person is met by simply giving. And so that's something that I've talked a lot about over the years, is that process. And so whenever I get stuck in life, I find out, what do I need to give? And sometimes it requires giving the things that you don't want to give. And for a lot of things, what people don't want to give, they don't want to give money. And so they hold on to it, they latch to it. And that's what's going to cause a lot of people to go out of business in these next couple of years, is that holding on to things and stopping the flow of currency for it flowing into life, because that's not how rich people work. And I'm sure you've talked about this, all the time. And Sam he does such a beautiful job of explaining this about your money mindset. And that's been a huge part of my growth is, my brand is really understanding, how do I think about money? How do I operate around money? How do I think I operate around money? Because they're two completely different things. And realizing, like, man, my dad hated looking at accounting. Geez, I hate looking at accounting. Where did my dad learn that at? Why did I take on that belief? What's the real belief? What's the real fear? And as we start looking deeper on these things, we're going to find some really incredible things. And guess what? It all leads to progression. It all leads to happiness.
That's right. Progressing, happiness. If you want to progress and become happy, then I would suggest you come to Strengthen Your World on October 28th and 29th?
October 21st and 22nd, Arizona. If you've enjoyed some of these conversations, we go so much deeper, more speakers. We take you through these experiences. And humbly, I'll say it will change your life. It'll change your life in ways you don't understand. And maybe you don't believe that, but here's what I will say. It will fast forward your growth as a leader by at least 1 or 2 years minimum.
Yeah. I think any event that you can go to, any experience that you can go to, that its goal is to transform you or help you see yourself in a different light, I think is beneficial. Some are better than others. I think Strengthen Your World and the experiences that I've had there multiple times are absolutely life-changing and some of the best. I'm fine to say that. I'll brag a little bit, right? I think that what we're able to help people with, the changes that people are able to come out of those events with are life-changing. We're going on, in a few months, we're going on 7 years of doing this event, which is crazy. Literally thousands of people have gone through it at this point in time, if you add up over the years. And so, and we go there and we experience it every single time, right? We experience the tears and the growth and the happiness and the hugs and the results after. And I think almost to a point we become, just like, of course, like you're almost like numb to that. Like, of course it's going to happen. And so it's hard to really like explain the growth out of it comes, but really like it really is that magical. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You can almost become numb to it, but also imagine like,
and maybe numb's a bad word, but it's just like, well, yeah, that's your expectation. Yeah, of course. It's the process that's worked for me. We obviously took a lot of time in prepping this to make sure that it's a growth. So yeah, and so when I talk about it sometimes, like my wife the other day is like, you didn't really sell that very well. I was like, I know I didn't, did I?
Yeah. But I think, imagine like when you were at a sporting, or I mean, the easiest example that's current is where were you when World Trade Centers got hit, right? But that's like a more negative thing. So I don't know if that's the best example, but imagine where you were if you were at like a winning shot at a sports game or something. And everybody who was at that, they have now a collective experience that's like makes them part of the team. And if you were wearing the shirt that said, I was at Super Bowl 25 or whatever, like there's only so many people that were actually at Super Bowl 25. And you have, you can say, hey, do you remember this shot? Do you remember when this guy kicked that and it happened? Right? Something for me, which is maybe silly, but when BSU, Boise State University, was in the Fiesta Bowl and they did the Statue of Liberty trick play, and it was awesome. Like, I've never seen it since. I never saw it before. It was an awesome play, and it worked, and they won. And it was like, crazy. Well, anybody who watched that game, we're now like part of the club. We were essentially there. We experienced that. Anybody who didn't watch it was like, I guess you had to been there. Well, that's kind of how these are. They're not classes, but they're like, hey, did you go to the Strength of Your World in Arizona at this time? Because if you did, then we have a collective experience. And then the Strength of Your World of that class and that class. And as one of the moderators and leaders like Travis and I, you get to be part of all of these different cohorts of individual experiences that you experience individually with different groups of people, but you get to be part of their collective experiences. And I think that's their collective transformations. And it's happened for my brother. It's happened for actually a lot of my family's gone to these at this point, but all of them, they attended different ones, and it was a unique experience that we get to share forever. And I think that that's what's so cool about it is it's a leadership experience. If you want to learn how to become a great leader in business, in life, in relationships, then you need to be at the Strength in Your World leadership experience. Awesome.
So Sam has some discount tickets. So if you want to come, message him on Instagram.
Yeah.
So, thanks for having me on, dude. This has been a good conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And if you guys got value out of this, share it with people that you know, and share specifics of like, hey, I was listening to this episode and I saw that this aspect could help you, and also go ahead and rank it or leave a review, and leave a review commenting about what you got out of this specific podcast, like what enlightened you. That just helps everybody see more of the podcast and also get more transformation for themselves. So we'll say that. Thank you, Travis.
Thanks, buddy.
Making time for me.
Any day. Any day, Uncle Sam.
And we'll talk to y'all later. Catch you next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.